Hola a todos, bienvenidos a este webinar que tendremos el día de hoy. Para mí es un
Hi
honor
everyone,
estar aquí
welcome
con
to this webinar
ustedes.
that we have today.
Quiero
For me,
darles
it's quite
algunas
an honor to be
instrucciones.
here with you. I would like to
Thank
give
you
you
for
some
joining
instructions
us.
now.
We are welcoming English-speaking attendees today, Spanish speakers and Portuguese speakers for the first time. So I have some instructions for each of you. If you would like to listen to this webinar in English, you can do so by clicking the interpretation option on the menu at the bottom of your Zoom window and selecting English. This will change your audio so you can hear the English interpretation over the Portuguese speakers at a lower level. You can leave the audio like this. We recommend that you do not cut original audio. Para las personas que nos están visitando que hablan español, si deseas escuchar este
Thank
webinar en
you.
español,
So
puedes
if you
hacerlo
want to
haciendo
listen
clic
this
en la
webinar in
opción
Spanish, you can
Interpretación
go
en el
to
menú
the
en la parte
option of
inferior de tu
interpretation
ventana de
in the
Zoom y
lower
seleccionando
section of
español.
the Zoom
Esto
window
cambiará tu audio
and
para que
then
escuches la
choose Spanish. This will
interpretación
change
en
your
español por
audio so
encima del
that you can listen
portugués
to
a
the
un volumen más
interpretation
bajo. Esto,
in
hazlo así y
Spanish
no
on top of
cortes
Portuguese
el
or English.
audio original.
Please do so that you
Entonces
don't cut the
ahora,
original audio.
antes de presentar la plataforma de Trusted
So,
Family,
well,
simplemente
before
quiero
presenting
darle
the
la
platform of
bienvenida
Trusted
a
Family, I just
Beatriz y a
want to
Claudia,
give a warm
que nos
welcome to
están
Beatriz and
visitando
Claudia.
desde Brasil.
They are
Ahora hacemos una
visiting
presentación
us
mucho
from
más
Brazil, and
completa, pero antes de
we will
empezar a
later
presentarles la
introduce
plataforma, quería darles
them
la bienvenida a ellas.
more completely.
Mi
But
nombre es Claudia
before
Gómez y soy
presenting
la
the platform,
persona
I
que
would
está a
like to
cargo de ventas
give them a
en
warm
América
welcome. My
Latina
name is
para
Claudia
Trusted
Gomez. I am in
Family.
charge of
Les voy a
sales in Latin
presentar
America
la
for Trusted
plataforma
Family.
como hemos hecho en los
And I would like to
webinars
introduce to
anteriores.
you all
Este
the
semestre
platform.
quisimos traer
And
el tema
as
del
we have done
compromiso de
in
la
the
siguiente
previous
generación a
webinars,
través de
we want
diferentes
to bring forward
maneras.
the
La primera
commitment, the
manera que
engagement of the
trajimos
next
fue el
generation
tema del
through different ways.
emprendimiento, la segunda
First
la
one
participación
that
de
we
juntas
introduced was
directivas de los
through
Next Gens y la tercera es cómo hacer que
entrepreneurial
los miembros de la
spirit,
familia y los Next Gen
and
se unan a la
the
empresa
next one is
familiar,
how to
vivan
make
esos valores
next
a
gens
través de
to
la
join
filantropía.
family
Entonces, les voy
companies
a
and to use
mostrar
those
un poco la
values for
plataforma muy
philanthropy.
rápidamente
So I
para
will
que
now
ustedes
introduce
vean
you to the platform
ideas de
very
cómo
rapidly
pueden
so that you can see
traer
some
esa
ideas on how
iniciativa de
you can
involucrar a estos
bring
miembros de la familia
this
y a estos
initiative
Next
of
Gens dentro de
involving
la
the
plataforma de
family
Trusted
members
Family. Entonces,
mm,
como ustedes
within
saben,
the
la
Trusted
plataforma
Family
tiene
platform.
todos
As you
estos
may know,
features de
the platform
notificaciones, chat,
has all
calendario,
these
etcétera. Ustedes
features of
tienen la oportunidad de abrir
notifications,
cualquier espacio que tengan
calendar,
dentro de la
among others,
familia,
and you'll
que
have the
tenemos una
opportunity to open
historia
any space
de
that
una
you would
empresa
like to
familiar pues que tiene
open
muchos órganos de
within the
gobierno
family.
y
This
acá
is a family
abajo
that
en
has
los
a lot
webinars
of
anteriores hemos hecho un
um,
espacio para
governance
emprendedores, otro
bodies,
espacio para
and
juntas directivas
we
del Next Gen
also
y
open a
aquí son
space for
algunas ideas que podemos
Next
tener,
Gen
un
board of
espacio para
directors,
educación en la
entrepreneurial
filantropía
space,
para todos
and
estos miembros
education for
que nos
philanthropy.
acompañan
Also,
de la
for all those
familia
members
que
that are
quisieran tener
joining
un
us of
contacto
the family
mayor con
and
nuestro
all the
tema
members of the family
filantrópico.
that would like to
Entonces, por ejemplo,
have
acá les
a
podemos
greater contact
enseñar
with
cómo se
our
mide el
philanthropy
impacto
section.
de
This
cualquier
is to teach you
programa que
how
tengamos
we measure
filantrópico.
the impact
Podemos
of
llenar la
any
plataforma
program
de
that
casos
we
de éxito de
have.
otras
We can
familias que han
fill the
tenido
platform with
experiencias con las
success cases of other
ODS.
families
Podemos
and
tener
people that
unos
have
proyectos
had experience
familiares que
with
podemos compartir esas
sustainable
metas que
development
tenemos
goals,
globales
also
de los
family projects and global
ODS,
goals
que son ahora pues el
regarding
lugar donde
the
todas
development
estas
goals,
programas de filantropía están dirigiendo sus
which
esfuerzos. Tenemos
encompass the
la
places
oportunidad de ver el rol
where
de la
those
próxima generación en
philanthropists
todos
are
estos programas
directing their efforts.
filantrópicos
We
y
also
podemos
have
compartir
the
esos principios
role
de
of the
inversión de
next generation in
impacto
all these
que deberíamos
philanthropy
estar
programs,
mirando cuando
and
estamos en
we
esto.
also
También
have a
podemos
section of the
utilizar la
impact
plataforma
investment
para
principles that
poder compartir esos
are being
proyectos de
used for this
filantropía
purpose.
que ya
In
estamos
order to
llevando a
share the
cabo y que sea una
philanthropy
manera
projects
para
that
que la
are
familia se una
being carried
alrededor
out
de todos
and
esos
which
valores, que se
are
inspire, por ejemplo,
purported
en
to
este activo
inspire the families
intergeneracional, cuando
around
uno
these
ve a las
values. For
familias que
instance,
tienen
this
esas
intergenerational
ganas de hacer
file,
filantropía,
when
esas
you
ganas
see the
de
family
tener fundaciones,
with
uno ve
the will to
que esa parte
make
generacional viene
philanthropy
de generaciones
transactions, and you
anteriores
see
que
that
siempre
this
han
comes from
buscado
previous
cómo
generations,
ayudar a
and that they have always looked for ways to help others and to make a difference. So in the platform, we can have this intergenerational file to inspire ourselves from the past generations. With Net Gems, we can also make an innovation philanthropy challenge, bringing in new ideas to support different causes. We also can organize webinars where we can bring other family members, other families, and young people that have found their purpose in philanthropy in order to get inspired by the different stories. It's very important that when you are running a family company, to see that your cousins, your grandparents did things that set the difference in the past, and that pave the way for us to do the same. And also we have this section of in juvenile funds of social initiatives where NetGens can apply and where they can bring to the family company all of the ideas, all of the purposes, and all of the causes that drive them so that we can support them. So this is what I wanted to show you so that we can focus on our guests. So first, I would like to introduce a little bit of this topic of this webinar. This webinar was entitled The Role of Philanthropy in the Transmission of the Legacy of the Gerdau Johannpeter Family. Philanthropy has the power to transform lives, not only outside families, but within families. In a world in constant changes where family values can dilute over generations, philanthropy initiatives led by the family company become a powerful bridge to convey legacy, identity, and purpose. Today, more than ever, it's essential to look ahead and to invite the next generation and the family members in general to become an active part of this mission, not only as witnesses, but also as main characters, because when people, young people and other family members participate in causes that reflect the heart of their families, they flourish as aware leaders and empathic leaders. This is a space to share strategies, and it's also an invitation to reflect and connect profoundly with the values that join us and to connect with the seed of a family to provide with long-lasting fruits. So it's an initiative to connect with purpose and realities. Welcome to all my guests. We'll have the honor to have a family enterprise group founded by John Davis, a social organization devoted to help entrepreneurial families to navigate through the new economy and to achieve intergenerational success. Here we have Claudia Tavassos, a global advisor of family companies, multi-generational family companies with over 12 years of experience working with different families or families of different sizes and industries, working on governance, structure, succession strategies, and social initiatives. And also we have Gerdau Johannpeter, member of the fifth line of the Johannpeter family. Her trajectory joins the pioneer experience in family governance with corporate social responsibility. Right now, she is the founder and director of the Gerdau Institute. Thank you so much for being here. And as I said in the beginning, it's an honor to be here. It's good to have all of you so that we can come together in front of Latin America and show other members of other remote countries what we do with these very important families. Welcome to all of you.
Thanks a lot for the great introduction and also for inviting us to be here. It's a pleasure. Bom dia a todos. Espero que estejam todos bem. É prazer enorme estar aqui.
It's quite a pleasure to be here with you today. It's always a huge reason of happiness to talk about impact and philanthropy. And I think this is a very important topic that have gained some space happily. So I'm very happy to address this issue. And today we're going to listen to Beatriz. You know the study of Beatriz's family, but we will understand a little bit more about the dynamics of this family and the evolution of the family enterprise that we have known through time. And we would like to understand also about philanthropy and how philanthropy works within the families. As Claudia said before, I work for Cambridge Family Enterprise Group, and I work with a entrepreneurial company families from 13 years ago. And since that time, I've been developing along with Jumbin, and she is my partner. She will present her experience as consulting expert in family companies. And also we have been working together in the construction of the family social impact in order to work with our clients around that definition and around the guidelines of the impact strategy. So it's a pleasure to be here, and I hope that you take advantage of this webinar. And I will now give the floor to my partner that will present her experience.
Thank
Bea?
you, Claudia. Both Claudias, thank you to invite us, Family Trusted. It's so nice to be here. Muchas gracias, bienvenidos. É uma oportunidade sempre boa de poder trocar experiências, contar
It's
pouco da nossa
quite a great opportunity
trajetória,
to exchange
compartilhar. Eu acho
experiences
que
and
sempre
share a
quando a
little bit
gente
about
escuta
our
outros
trajectory and
cases e
share
outras
and
histórias,
to listen
surgem
to other
novos
cases and other
insights
stories and
e surgem
new
também
insights
possibilidades da
will come
gente
around,
encontrar
and we will
novos
have new
caminhos e se
possibilities to
sentir
find new paths
motivado também
and to feel
para
ourselves
essa atuação
motivated and driven
familiar e
to
filantrópica, né? Eu sou uma grande
towards
defensora desse
this
tema
philanthropic
hoje em dia,
action. I am a
para contar
defender
pouco
of
de
this
mim, da
topic
minha
and to tell you a
trajetória.
little bit about my
Eu
experience.
iniciei a minha carreira como
I
arquiteta,
started my
acabei
career as
migrando
an
para a
architect,
nossa
but I
governança familiar
immigrated
no momento
to
em que
uh,
fazíamos
family
100 anos de
governance.
empresa, os
By
quatro
the time
irmãos
the four
da geração do meu
siblings
pai,
of
da nossa quarta
my
geração, eu sou
father's
quinta
generation, of my
geração da
fourth
família Gerdau
generation, I am the
Johannpeter.
fifth generation of
Estes
the
quatro irmãos, então,
Gerdau
começaram a pensar
Johannpeter
como
family,
faríamos
and
essa
these four
transição
siblings
e eu comecei a me
started to
envolver
think
junto com
about this
outras primas
transition, and I
fortemente
started
nesse
to get
tema da
involved
governança
along
familiar,
with other
até que
cousins
também
in
surgiu a
the family
oportunidade
governance
dentro
topic,
da
and also
estrutura do Instituto
this
Gerdau, a
opened the
estrutura
opportunity within
corporativa
the
dentro da
Gerdau
empresa.
Institute,
A
within the
Gerdau, então, é
corporate
uma
structure of the
empresa
company.
produtora de
Gerdau is a
aço nas
company
Américas.
that produces steel in the
E
Americas,
eu, então,
and
acabei migrando para essa
therefore
oportunidade
I
de me desenvolver muito nessa
migrated
área
to that
de
opportunity
governança
of
familiar
developing
e
myself
também
within this
de
area of family
filantropia e
governance,
atualmente de
and also
investimentos de impacto.
philanthropy and
Então, é
impact
uma
investments.
trajetória que eu venho aí ao
So
longo
this
dos
is an
anos
experience that I have gained
me
over the
desenvolvendo,
years.
mudando,
I have been
adaptando
developing
e depois
myself and
de
adapting
todo o
myself to
desenvolvimento
the
dentro da
landscape,
nossa
and
família, eu
including all
decidi
the
então
development
também
of
compartilhar esse
my
conhecimento
family,
com
and after
outras famílias. Então,
all
quando eu saí do
the knowledge
Instituto
that have been developed throughout
Gerdau,
the
que eu
years,
era
I decided to share
vice-presidente
this
até
knowledge. And when
2018,
I
e aí então
exercised and
decidi
served as
trabalhar também
president
a
of the
convite da
Gerdau
Cambridge
Institute,
com outras
I
famílias, então sou
decided to
consultora associada
work
e
with
são
other
um dos
families
meus
with the
das
Cambridge
minhas
Institute.
frentes
I am
de
an
atuação.
associate
E mais
consultant,
adiante, um
and
pouco
that's one
nós
of
então
my
instituímos o
positions.
Instituto
And
Familiar, né?
since
Nós
not
temos
long
então o Instituto
ago, we
Corporativo, que é o Instituto
set
Gerdau,
up
e
a
decidimos
family
ali em
institute. We have the
2020,
corporate
depois de uma
institute, the Gerdau
maturação
Institute, and in 2020,
nesse
after
período ali, decidimos então
developing the
fazer esse
idea over
Instituto
that
Familiar.
period,
Eu vou
we
estar
decided
contando
to
aqui um pouquinho mais, mas era
open
só para
this
dar uma
family institute.
introdução aqui
And I will tell
da
you
minha
more about the
trajetória de
institute
vida
in a
enquanto
minute.
par aqui
And this was just
de
to give you a
vocês.
brief
Então, vou
introduction of
contar um
my
pouquinho para
experience.
vocês
So let me
da
share
nossa
a little bit
trajetória aqui,
about
da
our
nossa
history.
história, da nossa família. Deixa eu só colocar aqui. Imagino que vocês estão vendo já a
I
minha apresentação.
think that you are seeing my presentation, right?
Bom, então falei um pouquinho de mim,
So I
geração da
started
família Gerdau
speaking about
Johannpeter.
me,
Vou
Beatrice,
contar um
fifth
pouquinho da
generation of the Gerdau
trajetória da
Johannpeter
nossa
family,
família,
and I
Então,
will
a
tell
família
you a little
Gerdau
bit about the
Johannpeter
history
é
of
a
our
família
family.
controladora
The
da
Gerdau
Gerdau,
Johannpeter is
que é uma
the
empresa
family that controls
produtora de aço
the
nas
Gerdau
Américas,
steel
Nós
producing
estamos
company in the
em 7
Americas.
países nas
We are
Américas,
based in
Brasil,
7
Estados
countries in the
Unidos,
Americas, Brazil,
vários
United
países da
States,
América
and
do Sul.
other countries in
E
South
esse
America.
negócio iniciou através
And
da
this business
imigração da primeira
began
geração de
after
João
the
Gerdau, veio
immigration
para o
of the
Brasil e ali
first
iniciou,
generation of
comprou junto com
the
seu
Gerdau
filho
family.
Hugo
João
uma
Gerdau
fábrica de
came to
pregos.
Brazil and
E
then they
essa fábrica de
started
pregos em Porto Alegre, que é a
plant
cidade,
that manufactured
minha cidade
nails.
natal, no sul do
And
Brasil,
this
foi onde
plant
começou
that
todo
was
o
based in Porto
negócio.
Alegre, in my
E a
birth city
Gelda,
in
minha
Brazil,
avó, que dá o
and
nome ao
then my
instituto, é então segunda
Gerda,
geração, ela tinha uma
which
irmã
is a
e
part
se
of the second
casou com um
generation, she
executivo alemão.
had a
E
sister
esse
that
executivo,
married
depois da guerra, depois que faleceu o pai
a
dela,
German
Hugo,
executive,
então
and
entrou
after
para o
the
negócio,
decease of
ajudando
his
então
father, Hugo,
a
he
não
came
só
into the
tocar a
business
fábrica de
and helped
pregos,
not
mas
only
acabaram
to
também indo para a área toda de siderurgia.
take
Meu
care
avô, um
of
grande
the
visionário,
nails
executivo na área de
manufacturing
contabilidade no
plant,
Banco
but
Alemão,
also they went
usou
to
todo esse
all
seu
the steel
conhecimento
um,
para realmente
construction
enxergar
industry. So
todas
what
essas
they wanted to do
possibilidades de
was to
crescimento
open new
da Gerdau.
opportunities to
E
grow.
trabalhou junto com seus 4
And he
filhos,
worked a lot with
Ali
his
são
4
Germano,
brothers,
Klaus, Jorge, que
Germano,
é meu pai, e
Klaus,
Frederico.
Georgie,
E esses 4
and
irmãos que
Frederico.
realmente foram os
And those
responsáveis
4
pelo
brothers were
crescimento da
responsible
empresa,
for
por
the
todo
growth
esse
of the company
desenvolvimento
and for the whole
da
development
empresa siderúrgica
of the
produtora de
company, of
aço,
the
no
steel
primeiro momento no Brasil, depois uma
production
expansão para
company.
Uruguai, Canadá,
And
depois
then we
uma
expanded
grande
to
expansão nos
Uruguay,
Estados
Canada,
Unidos, através de aquisições.
the
E esses 4 irmãos
another
também já
expansion to the
tinham
United States
DNA de
through merger and
responsabilidade
acquisitions, and they had a
social que
lot
já
of
vinha do Hugo,
social
uma
responsibilities
consciência
that came
de
from
estar bem
Hugo.
relacionado com as
And
suas
Hugo had
comunidades.
that awareness of
Elda era
being
uma
well related
grande
to
benfeitora,
their
costurava para as
communities.
crianças,
Elda
estava muito ligada
was
sempre a
also
orfanatos,
um,
enfim. Então vem já
linked
de
and
gerações
closely linked
essa
to
essa
these kind of
essa
activities.
participação da família com
She
a
also
filantropia,
helped
com as suas
orphans,
comunidades
and
vizinhas, o próprio
from that
negócio, a própria
time they
Gerdau.
used
Meu avô tinha
philanthropy
muito
to
esse
open new
entendimento
opportunities to
de
connect with
tratar
people
do
and
que
to
hoje a gente chama os
open that
stakeholders, né?
understanding
Mas estar
and
atenta
that
a
we
essas
are
relações.
conveying to our
E, enfim,
stakeholders today.
tivemos aí, em torno de
And
2007,
lastly,
uma
by
transição mais formal da quarta
27,
para a quinta
we
geração.
had
Então,
a
a minha
transition from the
geração é uma
fourth
geração de
to the fifth
primos, somos
generation.
15 primos,
My
filhos desses
generation is a
4
generation of
irmãos.
cousins.
Meu pai
We
era
are 15
CEO até
cousins that
2007.
were
O
sons
sucessor
and
dele
daughters
foi
to
meu
those four
irmão
brothers.
André, então. Então, esses 4
My
irmãos foram para o
brother André
conselho de
was the
administração
successor
nessa
of
época.
of
E 3 primos
one of the
trabalharam
brothers,
no
and
negócio
then
intensamente, meu
three
irmão e mais
cousins
2 primos, que
work
passaram
intensively
hoje
in the
também para o
business,
conselho de administração.
and right
E
now they
hoje
are
nós
part of
temos
the
um
board of
executivo
directors. And
não
today we have
familiar,
an
que é o
executive, a
CEO
non-family executive, which is the
da Gerdau,
CEO
que é uma
of
empresa de capital
Gerdau,
aberto com ações
which is
negociadas em
an
Nova York
open
e São
capital
Paulo.
company
Então,
with
hoje é um
that is
negócio
listed in the New
de
York
controle
stock and in the
familiar,
Sao
mas
Paulo stock.
com
So
uma
it's a
independência,
family
uma
controlled
autonomia
business, but
bastante grande.
in a business
E
that
a nossa
has
sexta
independence and
geração está
autonomy.
aí já,
And
assim como a
our
sétima, né?
generation,
Já estão nascendo alguns
we have
membros da sétima.
the sixth
E o grande
generation,
desafio,
and the
e tem
seventh
sido
generation.
muito
We
do meu
have six
trabalho
cousins
enquanto membro
from the
do
seventh
nosso conselho
generation. So
familiar,
our
tem
challenge
sido olhar para o
has been enormous
desenvolvimento e o
because we
engajamento
have to
dessa
look
sexta
at the
geração, que a gente
development
vai estar
and the
falando aqui
engagement
um
of that
pouquinho
seventh
mais.
generation as we will
Então, esta
discuss
é a
further in
história
this
da nossa
webinar.
família.
So this is the history
Queria contar um pouquinho assim dessa
of our
trajetória
family,
e
and I wanted to share a little bit about
vamos mais
our
falando.
history.
Bea,
And
obrigada. É sempre muito interessante, né,
Bea,
você
thank you
contar
so
a
much. It's
trajetória
very
das
interesting
gerações da
to
sua família.
listen to you
E eu acho
sharing
que para
the
todo mundo que está
story
aqui nesse webinar,
of
é,
your family.
é
And I
muito
think that
relevante
everybody
pensar, né,
here
na
in this
importância
webinar
que a sua
may
família
think that
tem
it's
para o
so
Brasil.
relevant to
Eu acho
think
que é uma
about
empresa,
the
como você
importance of your
falou,
family in Brazil.
de um
As you
tamanho, né,
said,
que tem uma
this
importância
is a
grande para o nosso país.
large company, a large company that is very important for our country, and it has several layers of people coming from one generation to the other. So that retains my curiosity about your family, and I think that people may find it interesting to know how you incorporated the strategic philanthropy and the impact investment topics in the development of your company. So I understand that your family had this DNA of social responsibility from your grandparents. Also, the four women in your family, it's very important to talk about the leadership of those women. And you also had the initiative to create a family institute to honor your grandmother, Elda. So I would like you to tell us a little bit about the initiative of creating this family institute. What's the origin of this? Where did this come from? I want to listen to that story because I know the story, but and I know it's a beautiful one. I know I would also like to hear about the impact of these in the new generations, and how do you perceive the engagement of the sixth generation. I know the seventh generation is a very small one, but the sixth generation is a very large generation. And how do you perceive philanthropy and social responsibility in the legacy that has arisen from all of those generations? So, thank you so much. Well, this is the picture of my grandmother, Elda Gerdau. The institute is named after her. She is a great inspiration. She's a great example because she worked hard to keep the family together. And that's why the Gerdau Johannpeter family arose and grew. And so my grandmother is a great inspiration for us and made us think about the opportunity of having a family institute and to provide our philanthropy with family resources, regardless of what the company was doing. As I said before, I was engaged in our corporate institute, the Gerdau Institute, and we had a history of social responsibility and social actions. But by 2020, 28, 27, when this non-family CEO came in, now this institute is heading towards the interest of corporations. So as a family, we felt the need to create a family institute. It took us a little bit to drive this topic because we didn't know exactly how were we going to manage the resources or manage and who were responsible for these. We are a large family. We have 16 countries, but we have 30 members in our NetCN. So we ended up being motivated by the time that we identified the opportunity to sell the house of our grandparents. This was the house where they raised and lived with the four brothers, and it was quite polemic in the family. The grandmother died 10 years ago, and we only used the house for Christmas and for family retreats. Sometimes twice a year or once a year. So Christmas was the large meeting. So it was very important for us to maintain that Christmas traditions with all the ceremonies and all the values that had been transmitted from generation to generation. But at a given time, the house was old, was
resolvemos
getting
vender
old,
a casa
and
e
it didn't
transformar
make
num
sense
fundo de
to
ação
keep
social.
the house, and
Então, foi
so
um
we
grande
sold the house and
impulsionador para a gente
transformed
realmente
the
criar o
proceeds into
instituto
a
e
social
ter um
action
fundo
fund.
patrimonial, não é bem tipo
So
um
it was
fundo
very
endowment,
important to have
que dá
an endowment
esse
fund
suporte, né?
that
A gente,
will
claro,
give
tem
support
outras
to our
doações.
operations.
Esse
Of
fundo
course, we
hoje
have
é
other
3
donors,
vezes o
but
valor de
this
que
fund
foi
was
a
three
venda da
times
casa, que tinha um
more
terreno
than the
enorme numa região super valorizada de
price
Porto
that we
Alegre. Então,
got
ele deu
from the
um
house,
impulso
the
importante,
selling
mas
price of the
depois
house.
também foram
So
impulsionados aí
we had
e
an
realmente
important
esse foi
boost
um starting
by
point,
the
assim, algo
sale
que
of the
uniu
house,
a
but
família em
then
torno,
it
né,
that
do
the
nome da
proceeds
minha avó,
grew.
dessa
So it's
dessa
very
atuação que
important
a
for
gente queria
us,
ter mais
and the
independente da
institute is very
empresa.
important for
E
us
aí
because it
nós, as
raises
4
the
primas, que são os
boys of our
representantes dos 4
grandmother,
ramos
and now
familiares,
the four cousins that are representing the
decidimos
four
então,
family
somos as
branches.
4
We
diretoras
decided
desse
to become the
instituto e
four
gerimos esse
directors
instituto.
of
Então,
this institute,
com
and
esses
we manage the
recursos,
institute using the
tanto desse
resources
fundo quanto
that came from the
outras
endowment fund
doações, né?
and also
A gente
from
até o ano
other
passado
donations.
teve
As of the
um
last year,
episódio
we
muito
had
drástico em Porto
a
Alegre,
very
depois das
dramatic
chuvas, nós
episode
tivemos chuvas em
in Porto
maio do ano
Alegre. We
passado,
had
e aí
a
também a família
serious
se
rainfall
mobilizou com
last
doações
May,
muito
and the family
relevantes, e
mobilized
aí nós
itself
decidimos ainda fazer
with
um
a
fundo
very sizable
específico, se chama
donations,
Regenera
and we
RS,
also
quem quiser
opened
conhecer mais é
a specific fund called
regenerars.org,
Regenera
tem um site
RS.
que explica
There is
todas
a
as
site,
ações e tal, mas também foi ainda uma outra
regenera.org.
iniciativa, só
And that
fazendo um
was
parêntese
another
aqui,
initiative.
quando a
This
gente
is
está
just to
falando de
open some
recursos e
brackets here
doações,
when we talked
então a
about
família
proceeds and
tem um
donations. The
engajamento na
family
fundação
is
e eu
engaged
fico muito
and
satisfeita de
has
ver a
a
forma
huge
como a gente está
vocation
se
towards
organizando.
this,
Eu
and
vou contar
we are very
pouquinho
happy
do
to see how we have
como a gente
organized
realizou a
ourselves.
atuação
And
desse
this
nosso
was the
instituto familiar.
way in which we
Então,
organized the ideas around this
aqui,
family
esses
institute.
quadradinhos eu
In
coloco,
these
né, que
charts and
justamente
these
vem
boxes,
recursos
I
de family members, né? Então, os
present
familiares
the
podem
family
fazer
member
doações,
resources. I mean, the
especialmente a
family members
geração de
can
cima
make
é
donations,
muito doadora,
specifically the
mas a gente até
previous
pede
generation
que a geração
is
de cima
quite a
doe
good
mais para
donor,
o fundo,
but
porque a gente entende
we
que o fundo
want
também vai
that
garantir uma
generation to donate to
perpetuidade
the
para a
fund
nova
because we
geração,
think that the
né? Então, a
fund
nossa
will
sexta
guarantee the
geração
perpetuity
poder
for
atuar
next
com um
generation, so that the
fundo
third generation
robusto
can act
ajuda
with
muito,
a
porque eles
robust
talvez já
fund.
vão ter mais
That's very
diferenças
helpful
em
because
termos de
perhaps they will
recursos, um
have
pode ser
more
mais
differences in
doador,
terms
outro
of
menos, pode ser
resources.
mais
You
difícil
may have one family
de
member
fazer
that
as
donates
captações, então
more or
a gente
less.
acredita que é muito
So I
importante
believe
deixar
that
para eles um
it
fundo
is very
robusto para
important
que
to
eles façam as doações
leave them a
com
very
esse
robust fund
apoio
so
dos
that they can
rendimentos do
use
fundo.
the
E a
donations
nossa geração, então,
supported by the
usa
yields of
esse
the fund.
rendimento do
And
fundo,
the
né, sem
generation
mexer no
uses, our
principal,
generation
com
uses
a soma
the
dessas
yields of the
doações
fund
dos
without
membros da família, e aí a gente
using
escolhe
the
iniciativas,
capital, the main
especialmente em
fund,
4 áreas,
and
sem
we
ser
have
muito
chosen
rígidos,
actions in
mas
4
em
actions
geral a
without
gente gosta de
being very
investir
strict.
em
But in general, we like
educação
to invest in
complementar, formação
education,
de jovens para o mercado
implementary
de trabalho,
education,
que a
and
gente acha
capacity
que
building for young people,
é
and
impactante, é uma forma de
preparation for
melhorar a
the
atuação
labor market.
econômica
I think that
também.
that's very important because it
Empreendedorismo de
improves
impacto,
the
que é
economic
muito do
activities,
nosso DNA, e aí eu
impact
sempre conto que
entrepreneurship,
pelo fato da
which
gente
is
ter
part of
criado
our
esse
DNA.
instituto mais
And for the sake
recentemente,
of creating
eu fui
this institute,
presidente do
more recently,
GIF,
I
junto
presided
com
over
muitos
the
outros
GRIFI,
institutos e
and
fundações
I
no
coexist
Brasil,
with other
e as
institutes and
atuações
foundations in
ainda
Brazil.
estão
And our
muitas ainda
actions
mais baseadas até em algo mais
are pretty
assistencialista ou
based in something
estratégico,
more
mas sem tanta
assistentialist or
inovação.
strategic,
E a
and
gente,
with
como surgiu em
not so much
2020,
innovation.
e eu
So
já
that's
tinha uma
why in
bagagem,
2020,
né, toda
I had
de atuação
experience. I had the
social,
whole
para
experience
mim
of
veio muito
social
forte essa
actions. So
possibilidade da
it
gente
came
investir em
strong to me
empreendedores de impacto
or
e
the
em
possibility to invest
investimentos de impacto, né?
in
Então,
impact
também
entrepreneurship
promover
and
esse
impact
ecossistema
ecosystem
de impacto tem sido uma
came
atuação forte
well, as a
nossa
solid
e
idea to me.
bastante
So that's
única
one of our
no
main lines
Brasil.
of
Eu
action,
vejo na rede
and
Impacto, que
which
nós
is
estamos
very unique in
associados,
Brazil. I
outros
see the
membros e tal,
a
mas
network
ainda
of
temos
high
bastante
impact,
inovador.
but
E o quarto pilar aqui, o
the other members
desenvolvimento
don't
emergencial,
have
que a
that
gente não
innovative
imaginava quando
side, but we
criamos,
do. and the assistance and emergency support. We were coming out from the pandemic, and I thought that that was a unique idea. And right now, look at the climate change, climate events, and we had the purpose. We had the purpose of helping our own country or other countries after disasters in different regions. And now in the Family Institute, we have that line of action to deal with emergency situations. Well, before going on, I wanted to address some important topics that you have already mentioned and that I want you to reinforce. And I cannot stop establishing a link with the work that we have been done along with the Cambridge team in works of a strategy of a social impact. Many families think that choosing the project is the first step, and you have always taught me and told me that there are so many things to be aligned before defining the cause. And you have given some examples. For instance, when you decided to create the Family Institute, who is going to be responsible? Who will be engaged? Where do the resources come from? All of those questions were resolved by your family at that time. So I think it is very important to reinforce here the importance of alignment, of a family alignment with relation to the impact strategy. That strategy cannot accord or can occur in different places. In Cambridge, we have developed 3 pathways to help families. One pathway is about philanthropy. It has to do with donations, as you said. I also have this corporate line, this business line, which have to do with putting into practice the matters, and also the impact investment pathway. So when you talked about this in a family like yours, that was a family with a lot of experience and with that DNA of social responsibility, even though you needed to align yourself about or around the governance of the whole institute in order to define the cause later. That was very interesting. Yeah, that's really nice. In our experience, Cambridge has this experience of providing for that alignment or helping with that alignment. And that's very important to think about how to deal with that family alignment in different fronts of governance. And this was why it took us from 28 to 2020 to get us ready, because we were not observing the alignment. We started to build the alignment, and we started to engage the members of the family. Resources are also very important to know where the resources would come from, and then the 4 cousins engage strongly around that idea of using this fund for impact investments. And to tell you a little bit about how the resources were used, we wanted to use the 3 pathways of Cambridge. I mean, for the donations that we make with the yields of the fund, which is within the philanthropy pathway, that also allows us to add within the pathway of financial assets for impact investments. So 20% of our fund is earmarked to impact investments. And this is a very unique thing. And in our case, it also works for us to try different things out. And we take care of the investments of 4 families at all times. And that's why we have to be looking after all the possibilities and developing the investment pathway. And in parallel or in tandem with this, in the Gerdau Institute, they take care of all the corporate social responsibility part and all the sustainability part of a business that generates a lot of externalities, steel and iron production, needs to be worked on very carefully. That's a perfect example. That's an excellent example of how you can cause a positive impact in different ways. I mean, it's not one way or the other. You can provide for a blend, for a mix, for a combination of practices.
Muito legal. E aí, respondendo
Yeah, that's
pouquinho, né, que você já
nice.
provocasse
And
para
I
falar
know
da
you
Next Gen, né? O grande
uh,
desafio, realmente, a gente,
told me
nos
to
últimos 2
talk
anos, tem
about
se
that you
dedicado
wanted me to
muito
talk
para
about
essa Next
NextGen,
Gen.
and our
Meu
next
irmão
challenge
André,
has to do a lot with
hoje está
next
no board,
generations.
né? Deixou de
And
ser
my
CEO,
brother
quando ele fez
Andre is
60
not
anos,
no longer
agora,
the CEO.
há uns 2 anos
He
atrás,
is
ele disse, nossa, quem
in the
vai
board right
sentar
now.
no
And by
conselho
the
de
time he turned
administração aqui no
60,
meu lugar? Nós
he
temos 3 primos
said,
hoje no
who is going
conselho de
to sit in
administração.
the board of,
E
of
surgiu,
directors?
então, essa
Today
questão
we have three
desse
cousins in the board of
Shareholder
directors.
Development
So
Program, né? Que
that's
a
why we
Cambridge
thought
nos
about the
apoia,
shareholders
a
development
Cambridge nos
program,
ajudou. John
and
David nos
Cambridge
ajudou quando a
has
gente chamava
supported
Cambridge ainda, eu
us
acho.
um,
Lá,
um,
lá em 2003 até
by
2005, a gente desenhou o nosso Family
23 up
Enterprise
to
com a ajuda dele. Depois
25,
tivemos
we
num outro
designed the
momento
Family
para revisitar o
Enterprise
nosso
growing
protocolo em
program with
2012, nós
the help of
trabalhamos.
Cambridge. They
E
also
aqui
help us
surgiu, então,
designing the protocol that we
como
published
início
in
deste
2012.
programa, né, a
And
Cambridge,
since the beginning
chamamos de
of this
novo a Cambridge,
program,
dizendo, bom, vamos
we
revisitar esse
told
nosso
Cambridge again to
protocolo, que está
revisit
com
the
regras
protocol
muito
because
rígidas. Nós não
the
tínhamos
rules of the
nenhum membro
protocol
da
were
nossa
very
sexta
strict.
geração
We
envolvidos na
didn't have
empresa, nem sequer
any sixth
estagiando na
generation
empresa.
member
Né?
of the
Eles tinham a
company
percepção de que a
or of
barra
the
é tão
family
alta porque a
working
empresa
at
é
the company
global,
because they had the
enfim,
perception that the
e
bar
tão
was so high
difícil
because
ser
this was a global
né,
company that was so
executivo
difficult for
de
them
alto
to
padrão
become
numa empresa
a
deste
senior
tamanho, com esse nível
executive
de
in
exigência,
such a
e nosso
large
protocolo,
company.
então, afastou
So
esse,
in
e a
our
gente
protocol,
resolveu
we
rediscutir esse
resolved to
protocolo e
revisit and
implementar esse
discuss
programa
again
de
this protocol and
desenvolvimento de
implement
acionistas, né?
this program of
Então, nessa
shareholders
rediscussão, a
development.
gente flexibilizou um
So
pouco
in
as
this
regras para que eles possam
revision, we
ter, então,
flexibilized
5, 6
some
anos
of
de
the
atuação,
rules
para
so
depois ter uma
that they can have
avaliação, ver se
5 or
eles vão
6 years of
adiante, se eles
uh,
fazem um
um,
MBA, enfim,
work, and
isso na
then they
área
can
da empresa.
start
No
in the
nosso
company
family office
in
também,
any
nós
area
estamos
of
discutindo,
the
nós queremos
company
ter
as
familiares
long as they
gerindo os recursos
um,
financeiros ou não, quais são
hold
as
an
regras.
MBA in that
Agora,
area.
este ano, nós vamos dar
So
mais
right
uma
now in
retomada
this
nessa
year, we
discussão.
are
Ela já ficou bem clara
resuming
na área da
this
empresa,
discussion
já está
as
bem
it became
escrita.
very clear
E agora nós vamos
and
ainda
in the
revisitar
company.
algumas coisas para
The needs are very
atualizar o
clear,
nosso
and we now
protocolo.
to
Na
revisit the
governança
protocol again
familiar também é
to
uma
provide
frente
for our
importante. Nós
updates.
estamos as
In
4 primas há
family
15
governance
anos
is
gerindo,
very
fazendo.
important
Esse
for
ano nós
us.
fizemos o 40º
We have four
encontro, que
cousins,
inclusive fui, fez que alguns eram
managing
na
the
casa, né,
the
que
institute.
foi vendida, e a
We
gente faz então sempre esses
celebrated
encontros, essa organização. Esse
also
ano
the
já envolvemos a
different
Next Gen e queremos já
events,
passar o
and
bastão,
next
que
year we
chega, já
will
nos
involve
40
the next
encontros.
gen, and
Tá na hora
we
da gente
will
renovar isso, então
make
também discutindo um
next
pouco,
year we
e
will
com esse enorme desafio
make
de
up to
pensar no
40
envolvimento deles também na filantropia.
events
Eu entendo
thinking
que eles
about
já têm
philanthropy at all
muito o
times.
DNA
I understand that
de
they have the
filantropia,
philanthropic
de
DNA.
chip social, que eu digo,
I
né,
mean,
Cláudia?
that
Até
social
escrevi
chip
eu tenho um texto meu que
is
fala sobre o chip
coming
social
in that
desses jovens.
generation. And
Então, acho que
the
assim, eles já
young
pensam o
generation, they
negócio
have a
com
social
um
chip
outro olhar,
and
né?
they
Assim,
think
a Gerdau é muito
about the
forte
business with
até
a
em
different perspective.
diversidade, em
Gerdau is very
sustentabilidade,
strong in
mas eu vejo que esses
sustainability and
jovens já
diversity, but I see
consideram
that
isso
those
parte do negócio. Isso
young
não, né,
generation members
é totalmente transversal, não é
always
algo
consider this as part of the
paralelo,
business.
né?
It's
E
not
a gente também, então,
cross-sectional,
quer
is something
ter,
that
como a
goes
Cláudia
in
mencionou, a gente tem esse
parallel.
Family
And
Enterprise,
as
então a
I
gente
said before,
quer
we
ter
had
jovens
the
envolvidos
Family
no
Enterprise
negócio, na gestão
Institute
da
that
empresa,
allows
quer
for
ter
young people
na
to
gestão dos
become
nossos
involved in the
ativos que
management
estão
of a
fora da
company, in the
empresa, no
management of
nosso
our
family
assets
office,
outside
jovens
of a
envolvidos na nossa
company,
governança
young people
familiar,
also
que
working
tem
in
que
our
olhar
family
também
governance
para o
that have to
desenvolvimento
look
das
at
crianças,
the
a
development of the
continuidade dos
new
valores, trabalhar a
generation on the
comunicação de toda uma
continuity of
família
the
que
values and
está
work
cada
on
vez
the
maior,
communication
né?
values
Nós
of a
tínhamos
family that
70
is
pessoas
getting
no
bigger.
nosso último
By the
encontro.
last time
Então,
we
como que a gente se
um,
comunica com todas essas
got
pessoas com
together, we were
diferentes
70
níveis de
people. So
envolvimento, de
how we can
conhecimento?
communicate all these people
Então,
with different levels of
esse programa todo
engagement
nos
and
abre
knowledge?
essa possibilidade
So the whole program opens the possibility for us to look at the ways to develop this generation over those four pathways and fronts. And our Gerdau Institute is one of those fronts. This is a very initial philanthropic action. And we only have four cousins involved, and we're running a very important transition from those first four brothers, and we're finishing that transition from that generation of the four brothers that were very much into donations and everything. And the four cousins now, we structured the institute mm, mm, heading towards the intentions, oriented towards the intentions of our families and thinking about the family as a whole, the enlarged family, as we call it, because we have the actions of the family along with the Gerdau Institute that was like a hybrid institute, and the family ended up not being so represented by that institute. But that changed. That's a transition that is happening. But please understand that our transitions are really long. We like to develop the topics throughout the year so that the transitions are not abrupt, that are pleasant, that are quite, and we, in front of us, we have that enormous challenge of developing that sixth generation over those forefronts. So in transition times, it depends also on the complexity and the size of a family. Yeah, so it works like this. If you let me get metaphorical. If you if you want to make curve with a launch with a motorboat, you will do it faster than with a bigger boat. So it's important to think about this because sometimes we get impatient about things because sometimes families don't have the patience to see the transformation and to see how you're passing on the pilot. And then I think that in Cambridge, and I'm using right now the head of the consultant and not the head of the family member, but we need to contribute as a Cambridge, we need to contribute to those transitions because there is no ideal model. Each family will need to build its model according to the times and the transition that they need to undertake. In the Gerdau Institute, it was very important for my father to have actions that were linked to the company, but even going out from the board of directors. And it was important to him to feel himself as a Gerdau member. So it was very important for them in general. And I learned from them. So they were coming out and I was learning at the time. So I had that opportunity to take advantage of their experience. So the Gerdau Institute is a perfect venue for us, for the four cousins, to develop and to manage their representations and the representation issues. So well, we have three brothers because the other one doesn't have a brother, but we have three more cousins that are in the board of directors. So that's part of a representation I'm talking about. They are acting in the board of the company, and we are running the philanthropic representation of the family. And to understand this difference is quite important. You also talked about certain challenges to engage next generations and to communicate to how to communicate to this generation that feels things different, that thinks different about different topics. And how do you envisage the benefits of engaging this generation, of developing this generation, and get them involved in social responsibility matters? What are the benefits that can be brought within this process.
Bom, a gente sempre gosta de lembrar, né, que
I
essa
always like
atuação
to
social
remind
toda,
that
ela
these
tem um
social
benefício mútuo,
actions as a
né? E a
whole,
gente
they
pensa em
are
primeiro lugar que a
mutually
gente está
beneficial
beneficiando a
because
sociedade,
we
né? É um
think that
give
we
back,
are benefiting
mas a
the
gente beneficia
society,
muito
and
a
that it's a
família,
give
né?
back, but we are
E
also
aí
benefiting the
usar isso
family
como uma forma
itself.
de
So
união,
it's
como a
about
gente
using
ter
this as a way
propósitos
to come
comuns,
together,
a
as a
gente
way to
entender esses
have
diferentes
common
fóruns de
purposes, to
governança.
understand
Tem
different governance
muitas
forms.
possibilidades
I
de
mean, there
agregar
are a lot of
valor
possibilities
através
to
dessa
add
estrutura
value
filantrópica.
towards
E
this
aí, neste programa
philanthropic
de
structure.
desenvolvimento, então, a gente
And
está
in
agora
this
com esse
program
desafio. A
of
gente não entrou
development,
muito
we
ainda
have this
neles estarem
challenge.
atuando especificamente no Instituto Health,
We
mas
don't have
fortemente, num
them
primeiro
currently
momento, na
acting in the
empresa,
Gerdau
né?
Institute, but from the first
Então,
time,
com esses programas de
they
desenvolvimento, então, tem atuações
have
coletivas,
participated
tem
in the
atuações,
development
aí tem a sua
programs.
trilha
There
de
are collective actions. We
individual,
have
né, com
the
os coaches
pathway, the
da
individual
Cambridge, então
pathway
eles vão
with
se
the
desenvolvendo
coaches of
e a gente
the
vai
Cambridge
identificar
Institute,
ali
and they
alguns
start
membros que
developing
estão
themselves.
mais
And
interessados
in
na trilha social.
at a
E
given
são as
time, we
futuras
will
lideranças. Então,
identify the
naturalmente,
members
eles
that
vão
are
se
more interested in
desenvolvendo
the social
juntos,
pathway,
né,
and
de
they
uma
will be the
forma
next leaders,
mais
and they will be
coletiva e vão
grown and
criando entre
develop
eles também
collectively to create
relações,
among
porque
them
até porque essa nossa geração
relationships and
mora em
connections,
diferentes
because
lugares, né?
even our
Diferente da
generation
minha
lives in
geração que foi
different
criada na
places.
casa da minha
And
avó,
unlike
passando
my
todos os sábados
generation, we
juntos,
were
né?
all raised
Então, essa
in
nossa
my
próxima
grandmother's
geração, a gente
house,
tem
and
sobrinhos
we
que moram
spent
nos
every
Estados
Saturday
Unidos,
together.
que
But
moram no Rio de
right now,
Janeiro, em São Paulo, em Porto
cousins may
Alegre, em
live in
diferentes
Sao Paulo,
cidades.
Porto Alegre, Rio de Janeiro, or in the
Então,
States,
muito mais
in different
desafiador,
cities.
muitos
And
não
so it's
têm
quite
muito,
challenging because
não se
many of
conhecem,
them,
com
they
pouco
don't
convívio.
even
Aí os
know
nossos
each
encontros são
other or have
importantes, né?
coexisted
Então, agora
just
o
a little
desafio
bit
é esse,
among
identificar
them.
o
So
perfil
that's our main
desses
challenge
jovens,
today, to identify
que
the
tipo de
profile of
liderança,
those
né?
youngsters
Eles vão se
and what's the
experimentando dentro
leadership,
dessas
the type of
trilhas
leadership
e
that
a
they will
gente vai
um,
desenvolvendo eles, procurando oferecer
experiment
boas
during those
oportunidades para que
pathways
eles
and
encontrem os seus
how to
caminhos
make
e
them
se desenvolvam
find
de
their ways
diferentes formas,
and to
né? E
develop
aí
themselves in
eu
different
gosto de,
lines
até
of
na
action.
Cambridge tem até
And
uma
in
trilha, eu gosto de
Cambridge,
falar que tem os
I
diferentes
always
tipos de
like to say
acionistas,
that we
né,
have
Cláudia?
different types of
Eu não sei
shareholders
se você não
in
quer
Cambridge.
compartilhar, enfim,
Posso
mas a
I don't know
compartilhar?
if
gente
you
costuma
want
dizer
to
que
talk
tem
about
os
that, but we used to
acionistas
say that we have shareholders
obstrutivos, que ninguém quer,
like obstructive
os
shareholders,
passivos,
people
os
that nobody
ativos, que
wants,
são os que estão envolvidos nessa
the
governança,
active,
e
the
os wealth
passive that are involved
creators,
in the
né?
governance, and the wealth
Então, esses
creators.
diferentes
So
tipos de acionistas, a gente
the
está
different kind of
investindo nele
shareholders, we're
para que eles
investing
estejam
on all of
nessas três
them
trilhas
so
aqui
that they
mais
stay
adiantadas, né?
in
Ninguém
those
quer,
three pathways.
talvez algum
Nobody
passivo a gente
wants, or
pode ter,
perhaps we
obstrutivo
may
nem pensar,
have a passive
mas a
one.
gente tem
We don't
realmente
want any
investido para que eles sejam
obstructive
pelo
ones,
menos
but we
supportive, né?
are
Assim, então que
investing
eles
so that
no
they become
instituto, por exemplo, eu
supporters and
sempre
police.
digo,
So
não
in the
precisam
institute, I
estar
used to say
todos
that they
envolvidos e
don't
nem
need
vão
to be
estar,
all
mas a
involved,
gente
and they
precisa de
won't be.
gente na torcida,
But we
gente
need
apoiando,
people
se sentindo
supporting, people
representado, né?
in the
Então,
bench
essa construção
representing and feeling
entre eles
represented by the
nessa
institute. So the
nesse
construction of
entendimento de
that
que cada
connection
pode
will,
estar em
in the
diferentes
understanding that
papéis aí
each one of them
representando,
can play
é
different
algo que a
roles
gente aprende com a
to
Cambridge
represent.
aí que está
This is something that
fazendo
we
muito
learned
sentido
about
para
with
nós.
Cambridge, and that makes a lot of
Muito
sense to
bom,
us.
Bea.
Thank
Como eu
you so
falei no
much,
início, né, é muito interessante
Bea. And as I said in the
a
beginning, it's
percepção que a
always
gente
interesting
tem
to
quando a
listen
gente
about the
escuta
perception,
falar e
and
contar a
because the
história
perception that we
das
listen
transições de
generally
gerações
when we
e de todo o
address
trabalho que
the
vocês fazem
generational
para
transitions,
construir um family
and
enterprise cada vez
all of
mais
the work that
forte
you have
mesmo,
done to build this family enterprise,
nos dá a certeza de que
which is so strong,
precisa
give us
investir
the idea
trabalho,
that you need to
energia.
invest
Não
energy
é não é
and resources
caminho que
to
tem um
do
fim,
this,
né? São
but and that it also
várias
gives the
formas de
idea that
você
this
cada
is
vez
an endless
aprimorando,
uh, path.
desenvolvendo e deixando as
There
próximas
are several
gerações mais
ways of
prontas
developing and
e trazendo
improving
um legado,
and
trazendo o
getting
DNA da família
the
e ao mesmo
or
tempo se
preparing
abrindo
the next generations, and at the same time keeping the legacy to build their own story within their family story. So that's very important, and philanthropy, either through a pathway or the other, I see that strategy, that impact strategy, as a glue to put together the purpose, the different purposes, so that family members are looking for ways to develop themselves and to find their role within the family, which is not necessarily as an executive in the company. You said this very clearly. Some of them will be executives, but there is no space for all of them to become executives. And it's important to create new roles, and their role as an impact leader is a very important role, is a role that is quite important in this system, and is also a role that will bring a greater family connection and union. And so before closing the webinar, I think that we can spend hours talking about the same thing, but I would like to open now the space for questions. I don't know if you have questions in the chat, but before going into the question and answer session, what's a message that you would like to convey to entrepreneurial families that don't have the level of sophistication and size as yours? Perhaps families that are going to the second or third generation, what's a message that you would like to convey to them in order to provide with a very positive impact for the family? As I said before, this is a very robust structure. This is a company or a family that has been working in governance for over 20 years. It's a large company, and as we have said before, we have looked at all different examples and models. And let me give you the three pathways. The three pathways, I think the pathways are very important because each family will find their way, their own path. For instance, we have a case in which we acted where there was a very sustainable company with a social responsibility person, and they were thinking about launching green products. They were really aware of those topics, but then the family came to the realization that they wanted to act differently, and not only through the interest of the company. And they decided to open a family institute. In our case, we worked in a hybrid model between the family and the company, and that made that made sense at the time. But at a given time, we wanted to put away the family from the company line of action, and we wanted to split so that we can provide a space for a non-family CEO. And since this was a very strong family in the institute, he didn't have a space. So it was necessary to yield that space so that they could exercise, so that the CEO could exercise a strong leadership within the business. So there are different ways, Claudia. And I think that regardless of the size of a company, finding this way is a shared action among the families. Sometimes when the families are very engaged in the company, I think that is interesting to work with the SG and the value chain and the impact that can be generated throughout the business. And this might have a greater impact than providing for a very specific philanthropy line of action. So my advice is to find your own way. And I believe that Claudia wants to say something, but it's about finding your way and generating the impact, as we did, the impact pathway. I will pose a question in Spanish. I will ask Beatriz in Spanish. It called my attention that within that journey that you're explaining, you showed to us how those webinars have worked over the last semester. and on how to involve, how to engage that new generation to become part of the family office and the philanthropy journey. And then you showed us the journey that it's been implemented for next generations. So I'd like you to delve into, perhaps you're not doing these, but how are you picturing the results? I mean, how can you identify within your next gen pool who has that leadership or this or this? Who is more an entrepreneur? Who is more into finance and to work with the family office? Who has that social spirit to help with social and corporate responsibility actions? How do you envisage this? And how did you differentiate the initiatives that family, an entrepreneurial family may have? Yeah, that's very good.
Perdão. Justamente nós
So
desenvolvemos
precisely,
esse programa
we
de
developed this
desenvolvimento de
program of
futuros acionistas
the
através de
development of
trilhas individuais e
future shareholders
coletivas.
through collective
Então,
and individual pathways.
nas trilhas, antes de iniciar essas trilhas
So, before
aqui a gente
beginning with
faz um
these individual
assessment,
journeys,
onde a pessoa faz ali
the
alguns testes, qual a sua
Cambridge
vocação,
made an
seu
assessment
interesse e tal,
to see
e faz
what's their vocation,
conversas
their
com um
interests,
coach
and
para
then we
se
talked
pouco de
to,
autoconhecimento do que
we provide for
gostaria,
coaching
para onde eles querem
sessions
ir, quando
so
tão
that they
jovens
tell us a
ali,
little
né?
bit
Às vezes até
of
antes de entrar na
what their
faculdade
pathway,
ou quando
how
entraram,
they
estão
picture their own
cursando. A gente pegou
journey,
diferentes momentos
and
porque
because
nós,
we
a partir de
did
16
this at
anos eles
different
podem
times,
ter essa
because
facilidade,
from 16 years on, they
mas
may have that
em geral aos
possibility.
18,
But in
então
general, at
fazer
18
primeiro,
years
alguns vão
old,
fazer
they
só,
have the
alguns nem vão
possibility
fazer,
to,
nem querem.
and some of them, they
Alguns
don't
vão
want
fazer este
to
e a
do
gente
it, but
torce
some
para
of
que eles
them will.
sejam pelo
So
menos
we
torcedores, supportive, né? Que
we
não,
support
para eles
them
não
and
serem tão
ask them to
passivos.
be supporters. We don't want them to be
Outros então
passive.
fazem esse assessment,
And
vão fazer esse
others
coach, vão
make
discutir,
the
e
assessment,
podem meio que
they
parar por
go through the
ali,
coaching
né?
sessions, then they
Vão
will
olhar, puxa, eu
discuss,
gosto disso, eu
and,
quero me
and
desenvolver
in
nisso,
that
ok, mas
stage, they
eu me
might say,
desenvolver no
well,
meu
I'm going to
caminho,
develop
tá bem,
myself
muito obrigada,
around
e
this area.
seguem, né?
Or
E
perhaps they
outros
say, well,
vão
I'm going
usar
to
isso e vão
make
fazer uma
my
trilha
own
de
journey, and thank you
desenvolvimento
so much.
individual
And
e
others will
coletiva. Então, na
take
coletiva, a
that
gente faz
individual
uma
and collective
conversa com
journey.
algum
In the collective
executivo da
journey, in the
empresa,
collective
a
pathway,
gente faz uma
we
visita a uma
make a
unidade da
conversation with an
Gerdau,
executive of the
a
company,
gente
we
faz uma visita
make a
a um
visit to
projeto social,
Gerdau plants, we
gerando
make a visit
falcões
to
que a gente
social
apoia,
projects,
por exemplo. Então,
in
vai lá
social
na
projects that
favela,
we
a
may
família
support, and we
visita.
may go to the slums,
Então, esses
and the
jovens
family
têm a
goes there
oportunidade de,
to
neste
know
programa,
firsthand about the
ir
project.
identificando.
So
Eles
they
não
have the
têm, em
opportunity
geral,
to
muita dúvida, né? Na verdade,
identify
muito claramente,
what the
eles, é
programs
uma
are
geração que,
about.
claro,
And
algumas dúvidas
this is a
todos têm, mas
generation
eles
that,
sabem
well,
muito o que eles
uh,
querem e não
they
querem, e
know
o quanto
exactly what
querem
they
estar mais
want and what
dedicados,
they
ou
don't want,
outros, o
and
quanto
how
não tem
is the
perfil
level of
para uma
engagement that
dedicação
they
mais
want to have.
intensa,
And
e
sometimes they
ok,
don't
né?
have the profile for
Minha família tem muitos
a more
esportistas,
intense
muitos gostam de montar
dedication. For
cavalo,
instance,
de surfar e preferem
in the
mudar.
family, we
Então,
have a lot of
conhecem
sports
o mínimo, fazem o
people,
mínimo
and
dessas
they
trilhas,
know
e a
like the
gente tem uma
minimum,
trilha
they do the
básica que eu
minimum
chamo, que é para toda a
journey, and
família.
we have
Então,
like a
assim, tá
basic
toda a família,
journey,
esse
which
encontro
is for the
familiar,
whole
a
family.
gente escuta
The
uma
family
palestra, a
encounter. In
gente
the
lê
family
alguma
encounter,
coisa, ou
we
eventualmente fazemos uma visita.
make
Então,
an
algo
event, we
muito
organize a
genérico
visit.
tem para
That's a
todos,
very
né?
generic
Mas
thing
nessas
that we
trilhas
provide for
individuais a
everybody.
gente
But
vai
in those
identificando.
individual
E há
journeys,
2 anos atrás
we
não tínhamos
identify,
nenhum, por exemplo,
and
envolvido na empresa. Hoje nós temos
2 years
5
ago,
jovens trabalhando na
we didn't
empresa,
have
né?
nobody
Então esse é um indicador, é um
engaged in the
número, né,
company.
de
And right now we
sucesso.
have
Eu não me
5
lembro agora de
people
cabeça
working for the
quantos
company.
assessments
I
nós
can
fizemos, mas sei
tell
lá, acho que
you
15 assessments foram
how
feitos, né?
many
Então, assim,
assessments were made. I think that
até
there
tenho
were
apresentação
15
com esses números, mas
assessments.
não pensei em
I
trazê-los,
think
mas...
I have a
E aí a
presentation
gente tem
with
um
those numbers,
comitê
but
de
I didn't bring,
desenvolvimento que vai
I didn't bring those
acompanhando
numbers
e
here.
olhando
But
nesse
we
pipeline
have
de
the
jovens,
knowledge
o que cada um está
to
fazendo.
go
E nenhuma
along the
pessoa que
pipeline of
trabalhou
young
17 anos
people
conosco
that, for
e
instance,
hoje
there
ela
was
faz só isso,
somebody
ela
that
fica
worked
ligando para esses
with us for 17 years, and right now that person is only working, looking at those young generations and asking them, what are your next steps? What do you want to do? So we're trying to try things out and to adapt to changes. And sometimes we sometimes we have someone that wants to do something over the next 6 months and then changes and switches to a different area. But we have a lot of engagement, a lot of interest in general, so they get interested in social projects, and we start opening different fronts and lines of action. And sometimes you will deal with a topic that you like the most, and then you will switch, and it works like this.
Que eu disse foi quando esse meu irmão fez 60 anos que ele se deu conta que a gente vinha tentando fazer
I
enquanto
stopped
conselho
listening to
familiar.
Bea.
No momento que esses executivos pensaram, puxa, mas quem vai sentar aqui
So
nessa
the
cadeira?
executives,
E os
when the
filhos deles
executives
chegaram nessa
thought
idade, aí realmente foi
who is going to
um
sit in our
impulsionador.
place, that was a driver for us. So to complement your idea, to pigtail on your idea, Bea, I believe that Claudia's question goes to a very specific. And when you mentioned this problem of who is going to sit in this chair, when there is a very specific chain, either for a CEO or a board member, it's very important to define how the chain works so that the family members are developed in given skills and specific skills that they will need to take that chair. It is important to remind you, Claudia, that we have that initial program which is monitored by the family board. But when this young generation comes into the company, they are monitored and followed up by the HR area of the company. They interact with them and they tell them we need this or that. Sorry, I'm losing Beatriz audio right now. I can listen to Beatriz.
Isso do lugar do conselho familiar, mas a gente não tinha esses executivos envolvidos e querendo encontrar as oportunidades dentro da empresa.
It froze.
Era muito difícil. Hoje,
so at the time it was very difficult. So today the company is concerned about finding opportunities for those people that change our mindset. So they are invited to giving things that might be interesting for their development, and that was quite a change. So there are different moments. Perhaps you will have phases that will leap onto the other.
Cláudia, eu estou preocupada com o tempo, eu não sei
So I'm concerned about time.
Estourou aqui o nosso tempo, eu teria que abrir para perguntas.
I think that
Ou se
we
você quer dar
can open
encerramento, não sei se
a space
quer
for
dar uma
questions,
final.
or Claudia, I don't know if you want to give a family a final message.
Sí, aquí tenemos ya dos preguntas.
Well,
Si
we
quieres,
have two
podemos
questions,
hacerlas.
so
Podemos
we can
quedarnos,
answer those questions.
para poder hacer
We can
estas dos
stay
preguntas,
here
si
to
quieres.
answer to those two questions if you want.
Vamos às perguntas. Quem precisar
So let's go with the
fique à
questions.
vontade, eu agradeço.
If you can read them out to me, please.
Claudia Travasso, si quieres las lees que están en portugués.
Claudia, can you read them because they're in Portuguese?
Tem Q&A aqui, né?
There is a Q&A session or section.
Sim, vamos lá.
Yeah.
Bom, Bea,
So,
parabenizando,
Bea,
parabéns pela iniciativa.
congratulations
parabenizando
for
também
the
Trusted
initiative.
Family.
Also,
Excelente
congratulations to
painel, vi
Trusted
muito
Family.
LinkedIn,
The
interessa
panel has
como
been
posso
excellent.
assistir novamente a
I
gravação.
found it through
Imagino
LinkedIn.
que tá perguntando
I
de
am
Andrés.
interested in
Acho que a
to
Cláudia
see
vai
the
falar aqui no
recording.
final como
I think that Claudia will give you instructions on how you will receive the recording. I perceive that education investments are seen as social projects. So I'm interested in knowing how do you direct the investments in a education system for the initial professional qualification of high school students from private and public networks and schools in connection with the corporate university of Gerdau. Bea, did you get the question right?
Mais ou menos.
Ela gostaria de saber, então vamos lá. Ela gostaria de saber quais são,
So
como são
she would like to know
direcionados
how
esse
do
investimento, né?
you
Você mencionou que a
direct the
família tem
investments in
interesse em
education. You
educação.
said that
Então,
the
como são
family is
direcionados os
interested in education.
investimentos
So
nos
how
sistemas de
do you
ensino
direct
para a qualificação
the investments
profissional
within
dos
the
jovens do ensino
education
médio
system
e
for
redes
the
públicas de ensino
professional
tradicional
qualification
em
of
conexão com a
young
Universidade
students
Corporativa da
of high
Gerdau?
school students and
Sim.
of private and public schools in
Primeiro, a
connection
gente
with
tem
the corporate
investimentos,
university of
né, que a
Gerdau.
gente chama em
First of all,
educação
we have
institucional da
education
Gerdau, que
investments from
são
the Gerdau
apoios, nós somos
Institute,
grant
which
makers, que
I
chamam,
mean,
né?
in
Então, a gente
which
não tem uma
we're
operação
not grant
própria, a
makers.
gente
We don't
apoia,
have
por
our own
exemplo, o Instituto
operations.
Caldeira, em
For
Porto
instance,
Alegre,
in
eles
the
têm uma
Caldera
rede de
Institute in Porto
atendimento a
Alegre, they
jovens que se
have a
preparem
network
na
to
área de
take care of
tecnologia para entrar no mercado de
students to
trabalho,
prepare them for the
vinculado à
technology
Secretaria de Educação, que
labor market,
seleciona
and this is linked to the
esses jovens da rede
education department. And
estadual, por exemplo, né?
the
Na
students
Gerdau
are
tem alguns
chosen
programas
from the
também de educação,
state
mas
network.
não
In the
estão
Gerdau
vinculados à
Institute, we have also
educação
education programs
corporativa,
but they
ela
are
está
not linked
voltada para
to
quem é
corporate
funcionário
education.
da
It is
empresa, né? Então,
headed towards
não tem essa ligação
offices of the
de quem
company.
está na
So
rede
it is not
pública e
linked
privada,
with
podem
the public and
usufruir
private
também através de grant
high
making, que a
school
gente chama.
members.
Então, a Gerdau pode estar
So
patrocinando algum
Gerdau
programa,
can
mas não
sponsor
tem uma relação
a
direta. Eu
program,
não sei se eu
an
respondi,
education
se a
program,
pessoa
but
quer
this doesn't have
refazer
a
uma
direct
parte da
relations.
pergunta, eu achei ela um pouco complexa.
If you want to
Não sei
rephrase
se
your question,
consegui
I think
responder
that it's a very
adequadamente.
complex question, and I don't know if
Obrigada,
I
Bea. Só mais
managed to
comentário.
answer
Está
properly.
claro, está respondendo, está
So let
claro,
me put
obrigado.
forward a comment.
Respondeu e mais
Yeah,
pessoas
it is clear to me. It is
parabenizando
clear to me.
Trusted Family pela
People are
iniciativa.
also thanking Trusted Family
Acho que
because
são
of
os últimos
initiative.
comentários que a
I
gente
think
tem
that
aqui.
those are the
E eu
last comments
acabei
that we
de ver também um
have
comentário da
here.
Trusted
And I
Family
just
respondendo
saw
uma
a
pergunta sobre o link da
comment of
gravação. Será
from
enviado
Trusted
a
Family
todos
answering to
entre
the
hoje e
question
amanhã.
about the recording of the session that will
Perfecto, pues
be
gracias a todos por habernos
sent to all of you
acompañado a
tomorrow
esta
morning.
sesión de
Thank you so
webinar.
much for joining us in this
Gracias
webinar
Beatriz,
session.
gracias Claudia,
Thank you,
gracias
Beatriz.
Cambridge por
Thank you,
habernos dado la
Claudia.
oportunidad
Thank
de
you, Cambridge,
conocer
for giving
los
us the opportunity
desafíos que
to
una
become
compañía
aware
como
of the
Gerdau
challenges
tiene con
that
sus
a
next
company
gens.
like Gerdau
El
has with
honor que nos
their
da que hayan
NetGens,
estado acá y
and
que
the
nos
honor
cuenten
that
cómo
we
se
have
hizo
to have
ese
shared with you
instituto tan
and to
importante que es para
share
Brasil y que fue,
with
me
us
imagino, en esos
how
momentos tan
this
duros
this
de
very
esta región
important
que
institute
tuvo
was
estas
built,
inundaciones.
and how
Entonces, gracias a
you
todos.
have
Nos vemos
helped
el otro mes ya
Brazil
con nuestro
and the
último webinar
region
del
that was
tema.
affected by the floods.
Como lo contó
So,
hoy Beatriz, otra
as
manera de
Beatriz said
involucrar a los NextGens a través
earlier
del
today,
Family
another
Office.
way
Y
to
la próxima
involve
vez lo
NetGens
haremos
is
con
about
la
it has
familia
to do
de
with family office,
Colombia, de
and
Auteco. Daniel Vázquez
next
estará
time we
como
will
invitado
have
la
Daniel
próxima vez. Muchas
Vasquez
gracias a todos por
as a
estar. Un
guest
buen
from
día.
the
Gracias
Auteco
a ustedes
family.
por
Thank you so
habernos
much for being
acompañado.
here. Have a good day,
Graças.
and thank you so much
Bom
for
dia a
joining
todos.
us.
Thank you. Obrigada.